Syrax, the dragon of Rhaenyra Targaryen, was a beautiful golden queen whose only dragon rider was Rhaenyra herself. Although Syrax had the capacity and capability to become a ferocious dragon, the fact that she was mostly kept chained and overfed led to various issues. In this video, we'll explore Syrax's anatomy and explore everything about her features, including her hunting habits, temperament, and personality before comparing her with the other major Westerosi dragons. That said, before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Syrax's horse skull-shaped head is her most distinct feature. First off, have you ever noticed how Syrax's head is kind of similar to a horse's? Yeah, it's pretty obvious once you look closely, and guess what? Her head also has a striking resemblance to the supersonic Concorde jet used in Europe from the 70s to the early 2000s. Both are sleek, streamlined, and designed for speed. So if something has been designed after a horse and a jet, it's gotta be pretty fast, right? That's exactly what these horse skull-like dragons are for. Why are we putting Syrax into this category? Well, all Westerosi dragons are basically differentiated by the shape of their skulls, which are based on real-life animals. The other two categories of dragon are T-Rex-like dragons, for instance Balerion and Drogon, and wolf-like dragons like Arax and Vermax. Syrax has a long, narrow skull and neck, which makes her aerodynamically perfect and great for quick, long-distance travel. While she's not the beefiest dragon out there, her speed makes her incredibly useful in battles or situations where you need to move fast. You could say she's like the sports car of the dragon world. However, we gotta say she's one of the laziest dragons in King's Landing and Dragonstone because of how Rhaenyra has kept her. While most dragons were active and took flight very often, Syrax liked to eat, sleep, and lay clutches of eggs, but that's not really her fault. However, that doesn't mean she's not useful. Need to deliver a message quicker than a raven? Send Syrax. Need to make a rapid escape before the enemy has more dragons? Yep, you guessed it. A dragon like Syrax is your best bet. Syrax is an elegant and beautiful but powerful beast. So apart from speed, what does Syrax bring to the table? First things first, beauty. She brings beauty into the picture. She's got those shimmering golden scales that are as tough as nails, actually way tougher, but anyways, these elegant golden scales provide both beauty and armor. The thing about dragon scales is that they grow stronger and thicker with time. We'll come back to this in a bit. So the scales offer a degree of protection and are impervious to the flames of other dragons. This protects the more vulnerable musculature and flesh inside a dragon's body. With time, these scales, they grow harder because of thickening and offer more protection to older dragons. So a dragon like Vagar would be nearly impervious to fire unless it's coming from a dragon like Caraxes, whose flames are considered to be the hottest among all dragons. There's a whole reason behind why that is, so in short, Caraxes is more fireworm than wyvern, which are the two creatures who are believed to have blended together to give rise to dragons. But we digress. Since Syrax is not a very old dragon like Vagar or Vermithor, her scales might not be as strong when it comes to her protection. However, that doesn't mean that she's weak. Her build is muscular and powerful, designed for both speed and strength. Her head has a strong jawline with sharp, dagger-like teeth, perfect for tearing through enemies. Because she's supposed to be a fast dragon, even her eyes are sharp and alert. Her horns curve back in a streamlined manner, which only goes on to pronounce and boost her aerodynamics during flight. Wings and tail. Syrax's wings are broad and leathery, which provide her the necessary lift and propulsion for sustained flight. In fact, her wingspan is extensive for her size, which means that she could generate powerful gusts of wind with each flap, which can be used to her advantage in both combat and flight maneuverability. We're not entirely sure, but it's safe to say that her wing membranes are flexible yet durable. I mean, that's the only way she could possibly withstand the rigors of aerial combat and long-distance travel. Syrax's tail acts as a counterbalance during flight and a weapon in close combat. The tail is muscular and whip-like, capable of delivering powerful strikes to foes. Her claws are razor-sharp and highly functional. Of course, they can be used for pretty much anything from gripping to combat. Is Syraxs Age a parameter of her size? Rhaenyra first flew on Syrax in the year 104 AC when she was merely 7 years old. At this time, the she-dragon was considered to be a young dragon, and Rhaenyra named the dragon after a goddess from ancient Valyria, which meant that she had no previous riders. By the time the Dance of Dragons had reached full swing, Syrax was 32 years old. Interestingly, although a dragon never stops growing, the age of a dragon is not always a parameter of their size. For instance, Vermithor was a couple of years younger than Dreamfire, the presumed mother of the three dragons of Daenerys, but Dreamfire was slender and smaller than Vermithor. Dragons grow large for various reasons. For instance, the freedom a dragon gets is one of the most important factors as far as its growth is concerned. Dragons don't tend to do well in captivity. Reproductive Biology. there's actually quite a bit of discourse about the mating habits of dragons. Some believe that, like most other animals, dragons also mate with one another to reproduce. However, some maesters believe that dragons have no specific gender. They may be one thing now and another thing later, like the flames they produce. However, it is widely accepted that those dragons who lay eggs are considered to be she-dragons or queens, while those who never lay eggs are considered to be male dragons. Syrax is definitely a female dragon, and while it's not confirmed how exactly she manages to lay those eggs, it cannot be denied that she did indeed lay eggs. Diet and hunting habits. While dragons are entirely capable of hunting their own food, the ones from King's Landing don't need to because there are people who bring them food. In fact, a few, like the cannibal, eat their own kind, so opportunistic cannibalism isn't alien to the species. As far as our girl Syrax is concerned, she's fed by people assigned to care for her and train her. Behavioral traits. Because of how Syrax was never really given a taste for adventure, she became lazy. When the dance began, she hadn't hunted in many years and was rather overfed, which of course affected her fighting skills and flight. We believe it also affected the way she fought her enemies. During the event called the Storming of Dragon Pit, where a mob of small folk killed several King's Landing dragons, Syrax was soaring in the sky. When she heard the commotion, she came down and started killing the people with her teeth and claws. She could have just stayed up in the air and roasted the small folk, but nope, she underplayed her own powers and didn't even use the flames when she was down below. So yeah, maybe not the best fighting dragon. Temperament and personality. Personality-wise, Syrax was a rather calm and composed dragon. I mean, she was a dragon, so you can't really expect her to remain harmless, but she did well around humans when compared to other dragons like Caraxes or Vermithor, who were absolutely ferocious. I guess it all boils down to the fact that she was usually kept chained up and was used to the presence of humans around her. How does she fare against other dragons? Syrax versus Balerion. Alright, let's start the comparisons with the OG dragon Balerion, the Black Dread. I mean, yeah, he's not entirely OG, but he is a legend, the only legend when it came to the dragons of Westeros. Known to dwarf all other dragons, his wingspan was so immense that he could cover entire towns in darkness when he flew overhead. Syrax is pretty impressive with her sleek body, long neck, and wide wings that gave her graceful flight. But Balerion, that dragon is in a whole different league. Balerion was so massive he could swallow a mammoth whole without breaking a sweat. His neck was the size of an evergreen tree trunk. While Syrax is formidable, Balerion's sheer size and presence make him a heavyweight champion among dragons. For a better comparison, hear this out. Syrax was like the 5th largest dragon in Westeros when the Dance of Dragons was happening, with Vagar being the biggest among them, and Balerion was bigger than Vagar. Hopefully that context helps a little bit. Syrax versus Vagar. Let's talk about a more appropriate comparison, Syrax and Vagar. This old girl is one of the most battle-hardened dragons in all of Westeros. Syrax might be quick and agile, but Vagar is a behemoth. Her neck is longer, her body is more muscular, and her wingspan is enormous, which makes her look like a flying fortress. You see, Vagar belonged to the most badass woman of Westeros, Queen Visenya. So the she-dragon has existed since then, and it's a known fact that dragons never stop growing, which is what makes her the biggest dragon alive. And Syrax is a pretty young dragon, possibly in her early 40s, which in dragon years is like being a preteen. When Vagar takes to the skies, her shadow alone can send shivers down the spines of armies. Compared to Syrax, Vagar is like a flying super tank built for power and destruction. Syrax versus Vermithor. Then there's Vermithor, the Bronze Fury. Syrax is nimble and elegant and glides through the air with ease, but Vermithor is a true monster. His bronze scales glint in the sunlight, and he's got this rugged, almost ancient look about him. And rightly so, because he's one of those dragons who was based after a T-Rex. This guy belonged to the old King Jaehaerys and traveled with him to various parts of the Seven Kingdoms. Needless to say, he's not at all calm and composed like the old king and reeks of violence and dread. Vermithor's wingspan rivals that of the biggest dragons, and his body is uber powerful and resilient, built like a medieval battering ram. His neck is thick and powerful, supporting a head that's always ready to unleash fiery doom. While Syrax might outmaneuver him in a sky dance, Vermithor's raw strength and size make him a terrifying opponent. Syrax versus Caraxes. Caraxes, the bloodworm, is next. This dragon is all about being fierce and intimidating. He's got a serpentine body, making him look almost like a dragon snake hybrid, and his long sinewy neck and tail give him a menacing silhouette. As previously mentioned, this is because Caraxes is considered to be more of a mutant dragon. Needless to say, Caraxes is possibly the most ferocious dragon of them all. Although he's not as big as Vagar, he managed to mortally wound that dragon, and in the end, both of them perished. Before Caraxes, Syrax doesn't stand tall. Caraxes is slender but pretty huge in length, and although Syrax is more on the bulkier side than Caraxes, she's smaller and definitely a weaker dragon. Syrax versus Melis. Next, we've got Melis, the Red Queen, owned by Princess Rhaenys, aka the Queen Who Never Was. Syrax is graceful and fast, but Melis is the epitome of dragon elegance. With her bright red scales and a wingspan that's both wide and commanding, Melis rules the skies whenever she takes flight. Compared to Syrax, her neck is longer and more slender. Not only is Melis larger than Syrax, she has a more regal and imposing presence. We're of the opinion that Melis is everything that Syrax is, but Melis is better in every regard. Syrax versus Sunfire. Aegon II's pride and joy, Sunfire is often hailed as the most beautiful dragon to ever exist, with his radiant golden scales that shimmer like the sun itself. Sunfire has seen his share of battles. He was grievously injured in fights with Melis and Moondancer, injuries that eventually led to his death. Sunfire is one of the many dragons who were smaller than Syrax. Needless to say, the younger dragons, like Arax, Vermax, Moondancer, Seasmoke, etc., are all younger than Syrax, and hence usually smaller. So to wrap things up, yeah, although Syrax was one of the bigger dragons in Westeros, she wasn't the best fighter. The Golden Queen could have saved herself and many other dragons when the small folk entered the dragon pit, but her inexperience at hunting and combat caused her untimely demise. She acted like a giant beast who didn't know her own strength, and that's what led to her death. Unfortunate, but true. You know what else is unfortunate? That's all we've got for you for today. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.